Hello, friends. Are there times when the code doesn't compile, or when you solve one bug and then discover 10 new ones? Or maybe you have stories about strange bugs that couldn't be found for a whole week? We've collected some incredible stories from people who know what it means to get bogged down in code, and how sometimes the simplest tasks can turn into real adventures. Sit back, it will be interesting. I have been all over the internet looking for experienced developers in software engineering, AI, and ML, all trying to solicit sage wisdom from those who have more experience than myself. I've even gone as far as to pay someone $200 an hour to mentor me. Too often I have found nothing but people running for the hills because of the seriousness of my problems. Those people who I have spoken to have written this issue off as a mental health problem. Perhaps I would be willing to agree with them if I didn't think that the trigger of the problem was the career crisis I'm facing. I'm 40. In the past 3 years, my life has completely turned upside down. Still, this is not the real problem. The problem is that from where I'm sitting, I don't see a way to climb back out. I cannot stress enough that the reason that I am on this sub asking for advice is because of my career. 3 years ago, I was a successful freelance software engineer with $50,000 in the bank and $80,000 in income, including medical and retirement benefits. Like so many others, I got laid off. My wife wasn't working at the time, and so I quickly went through my $50,000. Last year, my first child was born 3 months after my last remaining parent passed away at only 55. AI has crushed the job market, as if other factors like offshoring weren't enough. All of these factors together have left me unable to find consistent work, if I find work at all. I could go into more detail here, but I'm sure nobody's interested. The point is, things are bad. When something like this happens in your life, you realize that you have to start all over, and that's what I tried to do. But for the past 2 years, I've been paralyzed, lacking any context into what the market is doing or what it will do in the future. Should I double down on software development? Should I go back to school and get a master's specializing in AI or machine learning? Should I develop new projects and skills to show that I have experience with foundation models? How do I thrive in a market that is ruining so many? Hell, even if I did any of these things, rumors abound as to whether or not AI will simply take whatever job I retrain for at the cost of thousands of dollars and many months, if not years of work, by the time I've managed to get competitive with others. I only have 3 years of experience. I went back to school late and graduated in 2021 with some freelancing gigs and a couple of full-time jobs that I managed to tag along the way. I have a bachelor's degree, and that's pretty much it. My wife is transitioning to nursing, and that's a blessing, but it leaves me at home with the baby because we can't afford childcare. In a lot of ways, transitioning to a trade feels safer, not to mention easier, with faster returns. But I'm 40, and not only am I scared of starting over again, I'm also worried about how my body would hold up to hard labor, or how I would keep up with people younger than me. What I really need is just perspective. I don't know any senior devs, and I have none in my network. I know just enough about AI and ML to carry on a decent conversation, but not enough to know what to expect 2 months from now much less 2 years that it might take me to retrain. I need to know whether the climb is worth it at my age and experience level. I need to know if there's a job at the end of it, or I can't justify it. I'm a father. Hollow goals like bettering yourself and learning for the sake of learning are lofty goals that are best left to the young who have the time to do such things. I'm willing to do any amount of work if it pays off. If not, then there is no gain in doing it. So can someone please just give me a straight answer? Perspective is all I want. That's not our problem. Just a quick post. I wanted to share a story of a seemingly non-importance that changed my perspective on a lot of things and helped me be a more effective leader in tech. I've had a fairly fortunate career in tech, currently 37, and have 2 exits via acquisition under my belt as a co-founder, as well as a number of noteworthy roles in big tech/fintech. In the early years of my career, I went down the typical workaholic path, long hours of grinding through projects. My personality had a tendency to get involved with any problem there possibly was, and my superpower was grit. I didn't think I was smarter than your typical dev back then. I just backed myself to outwork everyone else. I found myself getting into my first business venture with a few other ex-colleagues. We worked at the same management consulting firm at the time in their tech division, working on a marketplace where we used Stripe for payment processing. This was back in 2015 when everybody was creating Uber for X type services/products. I was 26 at the time. During that business venture, for the first time, I started to feel my body pushing back against my strategy that had worked for me so far. Brute force, barreling through all the work. I started losing weight, becoming irritable, and starting to experience my first health scares. My challenge was, my behavior and personality at this stage was already heavily geared towards getting myself involved in everything, taking on every problem as my own. I didn't know any other way. I decided to treat myself to a break one evening by attending a local conference where the co-founders of Stripe were attending to speak, and as we were using their platform, I thought I'd go along, have a few drinks, and take it easy for one evening. The official content/presentations finished up and the floor opened up to questions from the audience. A man raised a question to the Stripe founders. He posed a major challenge in the fintech/banking space around transfer fees and went into a lot of detail about how it was a major problem in the space. It was quite a long question. The microphone went to the Stripe co-founder. He thought for about 2 seconds and simply said, "Yeah, I agree that's a problem, but that's not our problem." And then simply pointed to another person in the audience to take the next question. That moment had me absolutely stumped, and I think possibly changed the course of my life in some regard. That statement, "That's not our problem," came with such clarity and swiftness, and was a notion that my brain at that time almost didn't even comprehend. I remember spending the remainder of the evening in my head, is it really that simple, really? That's not my problem. That's not our problem. It seemed like such a simple statement, but it was one of the most profound moments that shaped the future of my style in tech and being a leader in tech. I think that one of the most important things these days in being an effective leader is helping your team with prioritization. What is more important than something else? A big part of that is having clarity on what simply is not a priority at all, is not a concern at all. Over the years, I've built up a bit of an arsenal on how to phrase the "that's not a priority, that's not our focus, that's not our problem" type framing to help my teams stay laser-focused. As you rise up the ranks in any organization, you find yourself having to say that phrase to more important people, eventually to requests from senior stakeholders, ELT, board members, etc. When you deal with less experienced practitioners or people without technical skills, they often fixate on the wrong problems or make a big deal out of non-issues or things that are trivially mitigated. In the interest of this post not rambling on for too long, I thought I'd just say, put that phrase in your mental arsenal. That's not our problem. I can tell you what I did. First, I built a simple robot that sent out emails in low volume. It was a basic message saying that I was looking for a job, and it was sent directly to companies. I was sending around 100 emails per day within a closed geographic area. I'm originally from Poland, but I live in the UK. So I focused on marketing agencies and similar companies nearby. In 2024, I got a junior back-end developer role. I had no prior experience and no computer science degree. I only had a portfolio with a few projects, including WordPress sites, a React Native app, and an e-commerce store. After 6 months, I had learned enough about how companies operate, including auto-deployment, debugging, working with senior mentors, handling tickets in Agile, and using Git. With 6 months of experience, I tried to look for another IT job in 2025. Unfortunately, I did not have much luck, so I changed my strategy. I went back to my email robot and increased the volume to 1,000 emails per day. Still no results. Then I adjusted the message. Instead of writing, "I'm looking for a job and I know XYZ," I started with a more direct and relationship-focused approach. I introduced myself, briefly mentioned my skills, and said I was looking for long-term collaboration. I asked if they had any projects where I could help. That change made a big difference. I started having meetings, sometimes even 5 days a week. I connected with agencies that did not have in-house developers but still needed website maintenance, startups with cash flow problems, and companies needing small development tasks. At the beginning, it was tough. I earned around £500. Then, 1,500. Now I average about £2,500 per month. It has not even been a full year. I still charge £25 per hour just to stay competitive. But now I work with around 10 different companies and middlemen, and I also receive direct referrals. My point is this: if you develop valuable skills, the main thing that stops you is marketing and how well you manage your time. I spend a lot of time doing things for free, such as meetings, answering messages, and giving advice. It is not perfect, and the market is difficult right now. After a few months, I stopped sending mass emails because I am focusing on managing and growing the network I already have. In the future, I may increase my rates, but I have not fully figured that out yet. I wouldn't say I'm great at or that I'm a pro, but I wrote an app that is now used in the company I work at. I'm a warehouse worker that I also won a company prize for. When I was around 15 years old, I bought myself a big 800 pages or so Java book, and after I couldn't understand even the beginning, I gave up and just said to myself that I'm too stupid for this, and I carried this thought with me until I was 32 years old. This thought is also why I ended up in a warehouse instead of being a software engineer with a great career. Through coincidence, I saw a comment on Reddit where someone asked, "What's best way to learn web development?" Someone said, "Try the Odin project." I went on the website and really liked what I saw and decided I will start to learn how to code, but this time I promised myself that if I start, I won't stop, no matter what. This promise to myself would become very important later, as I had several moments where I wanted to give up in the beginning because I couldn't solve some JavaScript puzzle. At the same time, I had the idea for an app that we could really use in the company I work at. For many years, we used a whiteboard to do shift planing, and it was really cumbersome, so my goal is to develop an app for this, but I had no idea how. 7 months passed by, and I was around half done with the Odin project and decided I had enough, know how to start developing the digital shift planer. If anyone is interested in the detailed development process of the app, I wrote a long post in the Odin project subreddit. You can check it out in my profile. Anyway, after 3 months, I had a working app that we now use for almost a year, and as mentioned above, I also won a company prize for it. And after our IT guy posted it on the company's social media, it's a huge company with around 30,000 employees worldwide. I had several requests from managers around the world from countries like Taiwan, India, and a couple of others for a demo. It turned out that they all are still using whiteboards for their shift management. While this is happening, I am developing an app that me and a buddy of mine plan to turn into a small company. All in all, I spent around 3,000 hours now with programming, over almost 2 years. It's never too late, of course, to start, but I can't help but think if I had put that effort in when I was 15, I'm sure I wouldn't have ended up in a warehouse. The only thing I know is that I won't stop anymore, and maybe it will lead to somewhere. Maybe it won't, but even if not, then it will stay a lifelong hobby for me that I do in my free time, like I do now. I wouldn't say I'm great at it even now, but I hated programming in school and just found a way to power through until it was over. Where I found the real coding value comes in the form of cobbling together whatever is laying around to automate some dumb business process. The stupider the process, the more fun I have relegating the work to the robot factory. For instance, I once had a business process where I had a list in an Excel sheet, and each item had to be tested against a specific command. And based on the outcome, we'd make a conclusion about the device status and move on. Each piece of work was maybe about 2 minutes from start to finish, but there was thousands of these work items needing to be done over months, and spanning across multiple people since the nature of the work was distributed. Plus, since the outcomes mattered for reporting and the work being incredibly tedious meant precision mattered, and the opportunities for mistakes were plentiful. I spent a couple days dusting off my long-forgotten programming skills and made it so a couple hours of tedious work was now accomplished in 4 minutes, complete with a full audit log of what was done, the results, and the timestamps, so the auditors wouldn't lay any eggs in the boardroom. It was in this whole process that I found a love for coding. Once I got a handle on how to make computers do computer work, coding became something of an obsession. I used to hate it. Now I baked coding directly into my business model. My biggest regret is I didn't do any of this kind of thing sooner. Making computers do computer work is a superpower that always pays dividends, especially if you speak business. My advice, find a practical use for what you're doing, and I'm not talking some GPT wrapper for a lame-ass to-do app. I mean solving a real business problem with your work. That will help you see the value and cut through some of the needless mess that comes from a lot of conventional learning in the programming space. Once your work feels like it has some measurable purpose, it's way easier to love it. Keep plugging away, OP. It'll all make sense soon enough. I'm a lawyer who got interested in coding because I wanted to get into legal tech. Over a decade ago, I had no resources and tried coding the website myself. Or I learned, the more I found that legal practice, a lot of it, is just executing computable rules by hand. And once I convinced myself that was the case, I could hardly bring myself to do it by hand anymore. I got obsessed with seeing how far I could take it. And lately, I've been thinking more and more that this has been a journey of confidence. At first, it was enough to just write code that, given some input, would produce the desired output. After I learned about type systems, I wanted the compiled to provide the confidence my code was at least logically correct. That went a long way until my systems became so large that the type system alone wasn't giving me the confidence I needed. I explored tests, and that helped a ton, at first. But again, the system got too large. I wanted to get back to understandable scope and scale, and found my next step in modularization. Finally, an area where my legal background was of use, because the law is by its nature modular, at least continental European law is. Modularization and iterating on contained units of code, preferably atomically true and exhaustively tested, turned out to be a huge unlock for composing into them. And that got me a lot closer to comfortably managing the scale and complexity of code I had always wanted to write. I could then broaden, explore new topics, ancillary to my primary goal, databases, APIs, back-end, front-end. Right now, I'm almost as confident as I want to be. My code are now open-source libraries, and I need CI to provide the final confidence that the code runs well in a variety of platforms. It took over a decade, but the vision is now coming together. A single programming language for the whole stack, with type safety and exhaustive testing throughout, making real tools and programs. Next step, take it all back to legal. I was always fascinated with computers as a kid, in the 70s. I started with BASIC and it didn't stick. I was copying code from magazines. I attended some camps, but it didn't stick. All the way up through 2 years of engineering at a university, it didn't stick. It felt like a math class, crap you are forced to memorize but never use. I dropped out of school, bored. But then the internet showed up. Computers started having detailed graphics. There were these multi-user dungeons, MUDs, and you could code up worlds. Fractals were a new thing. So I dive into learning how to do all the cool new stuff. But this time it stuck, because I was excited about it. I was interested. My love for digging in and finding out how to do cutting-edge things eventually landed me a real job with a local software company that needed somebody to focus on untraditional ideas. cheaply. So, for minimum wage, I developed a network protocol for old DOS computers to talk over a printer and serial cables, allowing this company's software to have a mini LAN when LANs were complex and expensive. There were other projects like this that kept coming up during the transition from DOS to Windows, like having a DOS program fully control the top 3 Windows word processors, but this got me full-time work in resume candy, which then led to other jobs that didn't pay minimum wage. I was hired as a temp for this big food distribution company, of which I will remain nameless for anonymity's sakes. The woman's position I was filling in for was going on maternity leave soon. I really needed the job at the time, so I took it, and they promised if I did an amazing job, they'd hire me full-time. I was a raw material supply distributor. Basically, I ordered supplies and sent them where they needed to go for scientists to make new foods. I have a really strong background in computer programming. After learning how to do the job in a month or so, she had her baby and went on leave. I completely automated this woman's job in a matter of weeks, using only Excel and PowerShell. I didn't say a word until the end of my last few weeks, where I basically did very little in the time leading up to her return. I added in a few updates for changes in workflows and verified all the data was correct at the end of the day after it ran, but that was all I really did. I asked for more work from my boss, which led me to fill in on the production line, a path I did not want to take. Toward the last few weeks of my temp period, the woman returned from maternity leave. I showed her what I had done. Her jaw had about hit the floor in awe that I had made all the hard work she was doing for years be completed by a computer program in a few minutes every day. In our next team meeting, it was brought up that I would need to get everyone online with this program before my temp period was up. Ding, ding, ding went off in my head that they are not planning on keeping me with that idiotic comment. So I obliged and got everyone on board. Unbeknownst to them, I put in a clause in the PowerShell script with a CLIXML encryption locally to the PC I was using. It grabs a specific encrypted date a few weeks out from my termination date and would just stop working after that date, or once they had wiped my local folder on the PC, or just simply not having the PC on. If they had decided to keep me, I could just turn it off and no would have been the wiser. I added this snippet to every IF statement and for loop possible with a new variable every time, thanks $PowerShell, in the code, so if someone was to go through it to try and fix it, it would be a nightmare to fix if they had the audacity to, with identifying and renaming every variable and clause and regenerating the CLIXML. So as you can imagine, I was not offered a full-time position for said company, and when I had mentioned the comments when I first started for doing an amazing job, which I believe I had fit the criteria for doing so. My boss said that with SAP coming into the production team next week, my expertise would not be needed. A month or so later, I got a text from my old boss saying that he needed to talk to me about that program I wrote. It was Tuesdays after my magic shut-off date. I knew exactly what the call was about and never returned the call as I had a better job offer already lined up. I feel if I had returned the call, I wouldn't be able to stop laughing during the conversation of troubleshooting.